Welcome everyone to the Gym News channel. We have a new show that we're starting. We're really excited to bring to you. It's called The Great Awakening, and with Rita and remembering God's promise. I'm really excited about this show. Just a little background on myself. I had my first spiritual awakenings and phenomenon happen to me at a young age, and I've kind of been on the quest to find out what it all means and what it's all about my whole life. And Rita is a dear friend of mine. We met through a healing cooperative and some shamanic energy work we were doing in the past. And since the first lockdown, we've become quite best of buddies. We've been on the front lines of the real news, and we were having a conversation the other day, and Rita, she asked me the question. And we were talking about this show, of course, and she said, Rich, you remember what the Great Awakening is all about, don't you? And it took me a minute. I knew she was getting at something, and it was funny because the number 317 kept coming at me that day, which reminded me of John 3:17 in the Bible.
Right.
And then you said, Rita, it's God's promise. It's remembering God's promise. And
Yes.
the way you explained it and how you connected it to the restoring of the Republic and all that just made me go, whoa, we got to get you on. Our audience needs to hear what you have to say. So please introduce yourself, Rita, and tell us, like you told me, what's that all about? Remembering God's promise and the Great Awakening.
Oh gosh, that's a big story. But I really start by saying that you and I are here to really connect with people, heart to heart, soul to soul. And we are in a spiritual battle. We are in a spiritual awakening, and people need some guidance. And this message that I shared with you is a message that God has been putting on my heart to share with my clients and with people that I've come in contact with. So I am very grateful to have the opportunity to speak to a larger and larger group. God is developing that in me. So I thank you for this time. And, 2020 was a challenge for everybody. It was the bringing up of this critical moment of the spiritual awareness. And in this 2020, there's been a lot of stress and a lot of things coming from us at all different directions. We've had human trafficking, we've had pornography, we've had big leaders finding out there a lot of corruption, and so people are like, what is all this insanity? It makes no sense. It has no purpose.
Can I interject? Yes, you're totally right. 2020 was like one for the ages. And you mentioned spiritual battle and the spiritual awakening and things like, Hollywood being exposed. And it almost seems like we're in the time of the great change, the book of Revelation mentions things that are happening right now. The Mayan calendar, they say, was really 2020 and not 2012. That was a trick by the Mockingbird to fool us. The Hopi prophecy of the indigenous peoples. We have all these cultures and prophecies all pointing to this time, and it sure does seem like it was 2020 was kind of the apex.
Well, I think you're right. I think, 2012, December 2012, 2012, was a time of a shift. Okay, we did shift, and our planet shifted. and the vibration shifted. So where we're at right now is called the initial impulse, the initial shifting over of this energy that we're moving into. And so there's a lot of things happening, but 2020 is a time of exposing the corruption, is exposing the lower vibrations, because we're going to be moving into a higher vibration.
Right.
So
kind of like exposing the illusion, or what's keeping us from God's promise.
exactly. So what I'm so what I want to do today is to give people a context for all of these things that they've been seeing on the news and all the conflicts that they've been hearing. I want to give them a picture to go over it. And that's the picture that I gave to you in terms of God's promise. And so we got to look very briefly at the Adam and Eve. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
And so in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve walked in the garden and knew God. They walked with him on a daily basis. And in order to do that, you have to have a vibration that is high enough to be in the presence of God. And so they had that.
Right.
And they had health and they had longevity.
They also were what I love about the Bible and the creation story is you can take it literally and you can take it metaphorically, but Adam was created out of spirit, right? Or the earth. I mean, he was created, and then they were of God. I mean, he created man in his image or whatever.
Right.
Sorry,
so
I don't mean to...
no, it's Adam and Eve have what is called the Adamic blueprint, the original divine blueprint within their DNA. Right. Okay. And that Adamic blueprint, that is the bloodline. So when God was with them, he promised Adam and Eve that he would bless their seed, that he would give to their children the inheritance of the earth and eternal life. That's God's promise. But so we're going to go back a little bit.
Right. Something in the Garden of Eden story is specific to Adam and Eve being of the highest vibration, or straight from the spiritual realm, a different DNA, if you will, something, because there were other people in the planet when the Adam and Eve story happened, or was all modern people come from this story?
We come from that is my understanding. And there are a lot, like you say, there's a lot of things that are gapped in that book of Revelations, the book of Genesis, sure. and about the origins. And so we're piecing it together from not only from the scriptures, but also from other spiritual teachings and knowledge. And so we're all bringing all our knowledge collectively together to understand that, and we will have that understanding. But I just want to
do you think we're gonna do you think we'll know in our lifetime the answers of
absolutely
where we come from and why we're here?
That's where we're headed. That's the knowledge that's being unveiled at this moment. Okay. And that's why it's important to understand this as a context to what we're experiencing, because because if you just look at these individual things happening around the world, you have no connection, you have no understanding of that there is a plan, that there is a purpose for it. And so
when you say a plan, you mean the overall big God's divine plan, or are you talking about the
divine plan? And the divine plan in action. We are living in that divine plan.
And we also and we also believe that divine plan is playing out with the alliance militaries, and that message of, I mean, it's playing itself out, the good and evil of who controls the planet. I mean, it's kind of what's happening is happening on the big, huge spiritual level is as they say, as above is below type of thing.
Exactly.
As within.
We are being in that sacred moment of awakening. So here's what we're awakening to.
Okay, yeah. Tell me.
And this is what is very important for people to understand, that we are awakening to our sovereign nature. We are awakening to the fact that we were gifted, our birthright is in this sovereignty that God created us and in that DNA. And Lucifer knows that when God makes a promise, God will fulfill his promise. And so when God made the promise that he was going to give to the people, to the seed of Adam and Eve, when he made that promise to them, that he was going to bless them and their seed would inherit the earth and eternal life, Lucifer knows that his time is limited. He knows that he's not on the same plane as God. So he had a brilliant idea. His brilliant idea was, let me inject into this blood of God, into this DNA, my seed.
Right.
And in injecting my seed, my DNA, then when God fulfills the promise, which he will, then he has to bless me. And he has to bless all of my seed. And then I inherit the earth and all eternal life, just like them.
Yes, if I understand correctly, you're referring to the serpent, the story of the serpent who tricks Eve into eating the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil.
Right.
I've always taken that is like, yeah, that what a lot of people think that's obviously symbolic to an actual sexual encounter, which then, you had Adam, or you had their children, Cain, Abel. There was obviously more children than just those two guys, because they had to reproduce. But at some point, it seems, and I've heard this, that the divine understanding, or the divine seed, as you put it, was tainted, it was corrupted. And I've always taken it to kind of understand that it was like, a false promise or something, like, it's interesting because it's called the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, but it's almost like, and I think what we're going to get to next is whatever happened there took people away from their connection of God, which is what we see today with everybody, forgetting about God and being more into entertainment and toys.
What happened there was it created a physiological change, because until that happened, they had personal connection with God. Okay, they saw God, they walked with God. But once that happened, they were no longer on that. They did not feel comfortable. They could not be in God's presence. They hid from God. Okay? And it stayed in the bloodline. It stayed in their children, that lower vibration. That's why they could not stay in the Garden of Eden. That's why they had to be taken from that place. And it went through the bloodline, that taintedness, whatever lowered their vibration at that time, it affected them physiologically and spiritually at that moment.
What we're seeing is in a book that I think dates back, 6 to 10,000 years BC even, that's telling you the story about this separation from God or spirit or faith, knowing that there's something greater than, there's a creator, as some would say. And now you've mentioned about how today we're so, the masses are so disconnected from remembering that God's
Mhm.
existence. And you were saying some things about the Mockingbird News and or some of the ways that
Well, so
am I losing
let
you?
me just clarify this a
Yeah,
little bit
sorry. I
more
can
so that
get
people
I can
understand a little bit. So when Lucifer, Satan,
yeah.
when he caused this to happen, his motive was to steal the blessings from the children of Adam and Eve. Okay.
The blessings,
And
yes.
and during that time, during he thought at that moment, he thought he had checkmate on God. He thought, done, I got you, God. You cannot, you can't withhold the blessing, okay, forever. You're going to have to fulfill the blessing. And when you do, I'm going to be included in that. All right. So God did have to withhold the blessing. And for a long time, Lucifer and his demons and all that, they made it with the humans. They mixed the bloodline even more. Went wild with that,
yeah,
crazy.
well,
He
sure.
kept on that. He just like, oh, this is my plan. It's going to be work, and I'm going to make it even more and more, and until it became so horrific on the earth. So it became so bad that God said, "Who has the most bloodline? Who has the closest to Adam and Eve?" And that was Noah. And so God did a God reset. He destroyed all living planet. He's destroyed all the humans. He destroyed everything that was on the planet, and he started over. It was a God reset. And from the children of Noah, from the sons of Noah, we came all of life again.
Right.
And so we have the bloodline.
When you say we, I got to throw this out there because I know when you say we, it's like you're almost saying like we were there, and you know we've been doing this. So you believe in reincarnation? I mean, do you follow? Yes.
I think we have eternal lives. I think that,
So our
that we have.
that's what I yeah. I think more and more people are realizing that our souls have lifetimes, like each lifetime's like a day to your soul. And so of course, to me, this is my own belief that we would, you know, this great awakening or this time of elevating the consciousness of an entire planet, you know, we're not just here as the lucky ones. We've been kind of facilitating in this story and in our story all together since the beginning,
right.
Which most recently culminated in the Republic, which we'll get to, and how we're the one nation under God, and that's so important.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's why. So I had to bring you back to the flood. We started over with Noah,
right?
And the reason that God chose Noah was because Noah's bloodline was closest to the Adamic bloodline. It's always been about the sanctity of blood. And in the book of Genesis, if you look at who's begotten who and who's begotten, it's all about the bloodline. Yeah. It's about, and this is,
well, what's interesting about that is, and I'm not sure if you go into this much, but there's a lot of talk about the deep state and the ruling elite families all trying to keep their bloodline, which is not the Adamic bloodline, obviously, but it's another bloodline that they're all trying to keep going. Yeah. And I've heard this before, and I've heard this with people calling it reptilian energy versus cosmic energy versus angelic energy. Now you're talking about the bloodlines itself and going all the way back to Noah, who then was the one that had the most purest of the, you know, from the Adam and Eve story. So are you saying we all have now the different like bloodlines in us because we've we're so far, we're 10,000 or 50,000 years removed from that time?
We all have a connection to the Adamic bloodline, okay? But the Adamic bloodline, the original divine blueprint, it has been tainted. It has been deleted, not deleted, but made impure. this brings us to
Right.
something very important. It brings us to Jesus.
Okay.
Because when Jesus came and
Yes.
he died, his blood purified us. His blood is what brings us back from that taintedness,
So
from
you're
all of that, back into the kingdom of God, back into the promise. And it is through that one event, and it all has to do with the blood. So the blood of Jesus is the perfect sacrifice. So if you look at the Bible, before that, people were sacrificing goats, they were sacrificing lambs, they were sacrificing the calf before they would go into the Holy of Holies, into the holy tabernacle, right? And they did that to put a shield on them, to cleanse them. And I used to think as a child, why does God always want sacrifices of blood? Why is it that God, God is God bloodthirsty? Is God? But it's not that he's bloodthirsty. It was never that. But
well,
it
the other team is.
Yes, the other team is, but
Yeah.
God is not.
Right.
God is looking at the holiness, the sanctity of the blood. And so when Jesus died, he died and he went through his own sacrifice. That was the ransom. That was what brings us back into the promise, brings us back to the original divine blueprint. Not that it has been restored yet. It has not, but it is in the process of being restored.
With Noah, right? So like Noah, he was like
Sons
when he was living
Shem, Ham, Shem,
right.
and
So
Joseph, I think it was.
But was he the one who was like the only, him and his sons or whatever, the only like righteous people in the city, and then they were leaving Gomorrah or something? So, but Moses was kind of, the way the story is, and the way that, not Moses, Noah, it was he was the righteous one, or the when God decided to destroy the earth, he was saved because he had the purest bloodline, or the most he was the most divine in nature, or however you want to say that. Then you have Jesus, and instead of God just destroying the world at that time, you had this amazing example of sacrifice. You had this being who I always said was the godfather of metaphysical healing, and they cut that part out of the Bible. Right. Healing people, telling people that there's a God. I always, again, that's why I want to talk about it in another episode. And what is he saying in the parables? And some of these things are ringing true today. But here you have this guy who did nothing but heal people, was talking of spirit, and the deep state of that time wanted him dead, and so they killed him, right?
Yes, exactly.
And then his famous words, forgive them, they know not what they do. It's like his example of sacrifice was so holy and so tremendous that it heals people to this day.
Exactly.
And at that time, that was enough almost, that God didn't have to destroy the earth again like he had to with Noah, because it was almost like the spiritual cleansing versus the physical one. And here we are only 2,000 years later, and here we are. It's almost like everybody, here we are again. Some people think we're about to get cleansed again because of how bad it's gotten. I mean, we had somebody sing our quote inauguration ceremony who's, I think, is a Satanist, and Lady Gaga, she like wears those type of imagery. And so we're almost at that. So here we are. So now,
this is going to make sense in a minute. We're going to tie this in, and it's going to make sense to you. You're going to go,
aha. You're doing great, Rita. Thank you so much.
We're getting there. Yeah. Okay, so I know this is kind of like bringing in a lot of questions and a lot of information, and
well, we're going to have this again and keep going.
Yeah, we're gonna bring it the context, and in the context it is so important what Jesus did is so important. What the sanctity of blood did is so important because it was eternal redemption. We, through Jesus, it's eternal. And nobody can enter the kingdom of God except through the blood of Jesus, because that is the connection that lets that we can receive that blessing, that we can receive the promise that was given. And it's our birthright. It's our inheritance from God. And we will get that. It's going to be fulfilled.
But I
We're
think
not saved by our works. We are not saved by our good deeds. We are saved by the grace of God. We are saved solely by that, by his redemption. And so if people want to look up Hebrews 9:11-15, that talks about the blood of Christ. And what it says is, he, meaning Christ, did not enter by means of the blood of goats and calves, but he entered the most holy place once for all by his own blood, thus obtaining eternal redemption. So all the
yes,
works that we need, all of this is in what he did. And so what that did for us, what that accomplished, it cleansed our consciousness from the acts that led to death, so that we may serve the living God. Okay. And that those who are called may receive the promise, eternal inheritance, that we can get that promise of the internal, that we're going back to the promise of God, right? Back to Adam and Eve.
the promise there is see, I'm thinking the promise that there is a God. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that don't know that. I think that, so I think that the reason why the world is so where it is right now is so many people forgot that there is even a God, a higher spirit, a creator. And if you don't believe that there's a God, a creator, then you're not going to believe that there's a Satan or a devil.
Mhm.
And so then you rely on government to be your God or your provider.
Mhm.
And so remembering that we are divine beings, and that to me, what I got out when we spoke was that, God's promise is that if you live through him, if you remember your own divine being inside of you, and that's why I want, but so for our audience who's maybe struggling with understanding, some people have different faiths and some people have different paths or to God, to spirit, and some people have been overwhelmed with the dogma and the hypocrisy of different religions. So when you say through the blood, there's obviously a spiritual energy of his blood because it was so pure, and the offer of sacrifice, that it somehow reset everybody's energy, or gave everyone the wake up that they need to wake up. Okay, gave us
it gave us a choice. It gave us a way to have the freedom. And so God provided the door, but it's up to us to walk through it. Sure. God provided the sacrifice, the ceremony.
You first have to know there is a door, right?
There is a door, but we got to go through it.
Right.
It's our choice. And when what people forget in this, we actually, the energy that has been cast, it's like a spell. We've been lulled into the spell,
yes,
of not knowing and not remembering, because we've been programmed, and it's kind of like a spell. And how do they use that spell? How do they say that spell? They've been doing it over thousands. They've been doing it over and over and over in different ways. Right, exactly. So what is the easiest way to win a war? Make the person believe there's no war. So what Satan did was, if there's no battle, what's the biggest trick Satan ever played, which was to make you think he didn't exist. Right. And by saying there's no war, there's no enemy, you're being overreacting. They would say, you two fight.
you know, okay, Russia, United States, you two fight. You guys
Right.
are fighting a war. We're back here orchestrating the war, and the real war that's going on between good and evil, you can't even see it because they got
Right.
you. So, and the reason why people can't see it is because they forgot their divine connection with God, right? They forgot
They forgot.
they forgot God's promise, which is you're not supposed to be fighting wars for your government and paying taxes till you died and forget you're a divine being and you're here to
To create
remember
heaven
that,
on earth. We're
to
supposed
bring
to be
heaven on earth. Yes.
we're here to have this kingdom and create heaven on earth. That's what our job is.
I think
And
that's
we can't
Masaris.
do that. We can't not do that right now because we're functioning on a different level. We're not functioning from, and the only way, and this is why it's so important for people to know, that's why we're going through this whole conversation, is because we have to possess, own this gift of grace. If we don't own it, then we have no rights. We don't have possession.
You told me a story about about a vehicle and the guy getting the vehicle
Sure.
and
Sure,
how
sure.
when you explained it to me again. The
And so we give.
remembering.
I think this is a good time to bring that story up.
Yeah, tell the
So
story.
so imagine, for saying, I'm going to use you.
Sure.
Imagine that I come to you, Rich, and I say, hey, I've been very blessed, Rich, in my life, and I want to bless you. And I
Yes.
know you need a new vehicle. And so here's the keys. I bought you a new truck. Here's the keys. It's got all the bells and whistles. I paid for the truck. It's
Thank
your
Rita.
truck.
Thank you, Rita.
You're like, yay, good, thank
Yeah,
you. It's like,
that
and so
sounds good.
I said, here's the keys. On the key tag there is the license, the VIN number, and all you got to do, here's the business card of the person I talked to. You go there, they got all the paperwork. You don't owe a dime. You just go pick up your car, pick up your truck. And I got to leave. I got to go out of town. I got to go leave the country for a little bit. So you can do this on your own, and I want you to be blessed. And so you're happy, you're delighted. The next day you go there, you take the card, you go with the keys, and you meet with the owner, and you sit down and you explain who you are and you explain what I told you. And the man is silent. And then when you finish, he says, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard of that person. We don't make deals like that. I don't know who gave you those keys. Those keys don't mean anything to me. You know, your keys don't mean anything to me.
That would suck.
So he's not even looking. He's not even looking for the documents. He's not even trying to verify your story. He just says, no, you get out of here. I don't know what kind of scam you're playing. Leave.
Yeah.
So now you're outside of the dealership and you're standing in the sidewalk and you're like, what just happened? You know,
And
why
you're out
would
of the
that man
country.
kick me out? Why would he lie like that? Why would he tell me that I don't have ownership of this car? And why would she tell me that I did? So what reality am I in? Somebody's telling me I have this blessing, and another person's telling me I don't have the blessing. So you go home, you're discouraged, you get home, your relatives are there, your friends are there. So where's the car? You say, well, there were some problems, and we knew it. They confirm everything that this other person said. Okay, there's all this doubt. So you take the keys.
Right. Everyone had told me that it was too good to be true. Then I come, they say, where's the truck? And I'm like, it wasn't a true thing. And then they're all like, ha, we told you, right?
Yeah. So then you take your keys, you throw them in the drawer and you forget about them. But in the meantime, you've had all these difficulties, your car breaks down multiple times, you're spending money like crazy, you can't get it fixed right, you're losing time, your family's suffering, all of these things are happening. And finally, one day you have had enough and you say, she told me the truth. He didn't even look at the VIN number. He didn't even look. Now you're like, I'm ready to go back there and I'm ready to take possession. I'm ready to go back and fight for what I know she said.
Yeah.
And so you're ready to go, and you pick up the mail, and in the mail, there's the title.
Right.
Okay. You see the title. You say, she did tell me the truth. I have the title. So you go back now and you're mad.
Sure.
You're angry because that person lied to you. And for whatever reason they lied to you, it's not going to satisfy you. And they'll be lucky if you don't punch them in the face, right?
Right.
But you go back, you show them the paperwork, and they're, oh, haha, we're so sorry. We made a mistake. Ha ha ha. It was just an error, in clerical error. But no clerical error can make up for all the suffering that you had. No, it was a deception, right? So
Right.
you get in your car.
Well, it was also me not believing in me believing the stranger, over my friend. You know, you were in the
Right.
story, you're in another country, can't get a hold of you, but I'm believing because they told me it was, everyone told me it was too good to be true. And then right when the person in the story is willing to just say, it's gotta be, she wouldn't lie to me, it's gotta be true, then the title shows up.
Then the title shows up, and then you've got ownership.
And then
so
you got proof, and then you go in, and then
I'm sorry. As soon as you get into the truck, as soon as you drive that truck, you have possession.
Right.
You now have possession of it. So this is the thing. The Republic of the United States of America, we the people have governance of our country.
Right.
But we do not have possession of our country.
Right. We the people are, this is one nation under God. It was the first republic that said it's a nation for people who were created by, who were endowed by their creator with unalienable rights. And so but if we let governors, if we let the politicians, lifelong politicians, tell us the people aren't the government.
So here's implied, this is what happened. When you walked away, like in this example, when you walked away and you said, well, this person who's telling me I don't own this, who's in possession of my vehicle, you think that because they're in possession of the vehicle that they have ownership of the vehicle. And this is where we get into conflict. We think because we have, I'm going to say it, we have a fake government right now in possession of our republic, we think that they have ownership.
Yeah. But
that is not true. The truth is that we the people have ownership, but we lack is possession. And by not acting, by not taking possession, they have the implied consent. Well, you know, he could have insisted and gotten his truck and got taken off. You know, he could have called the police and resolved it, or he could have gotten a lawyer to come in. There's all these things. So while they're holding possession, they're assuming that you are giving them consent to hold possession of what you own. Right. And so right now, and that's
I didn't do anything to fight back or try to prove it. I just kind of believed them because they seem like they had a good story.
They had a good story, yes. And this is what is the where we're at right now with our media and all of these things that keep telling us a story that is that defends their right to possess something that belongs to all of us.
And you know what's interesting about that story? You said, you know, it was the word keys. I had the keys the whole time, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So we have the keys to our country. We just need to know how to put them in the darn, you know, engine. And we have the keys to our own
salvation.
Great awakening, with our own salvation, our own great awakening. So it's all kind of like, as we awaken to the keys to our freedom, right? Right. We're supposed to be blessed and have, this planet has enough resources and enough love to make every single person have abundance and sustainability. And yet we let these crooks run it, and we let these crooks infiltrate these governments and tell the people, no, you don't have the keys to your freedom. You have, and
Yeah.
so we all have the keys. And so the Great Awakening is remembering God's promise, which is we are divine beings. This country is the first one that's supposed to be ran by the people and not the elites. And so let's have you end off. Let's have you say a few things, and then we'll wrap it up.
Well, thank you. Well, so my definition of a patriot is an individual who understands the sovereignty, the authority under the sovereignty, okay, under God, under the blood of Jesus. And that is why a patriot will not concede. There is a line. And the line is, I'm not giving over my promise. I'm not surrendering my God-given gifts to run this country, to self-govern. They're not, because it is, when you understand who you are, when you understand the sacredness of what you are empowered to do through those keys, what has been given to you, you're not going to just say, okay, well, I'll just give you my keys and you drive my car, or I'll let you have possession of my car.
Right.
You're just not going to do that anymore. And so this is who the patriots are. Right now, our country, we're taking possession back. And what we are seeing happen in all the things that are being exposed to us, that is not the awakening. That is the catalyst that is happening towards the awakening.
Sure.
The awakening, when we know who we are, we can take our government into a new place. We are going to have to create a new foundation, a new government, a new republic. And this means that we have to understand who we are. We have to understand what our rights are and what our sovereignty is. Yeah. So that's my definition of a patriot.
Well, absolutely. I mean, a patriot is someone who wants to be free, who doesn't want to be oppressed by some bureaucrat, politician, a person who knows. It's the Constitution. It's right there. Every person is endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the way that they, and like you said, everything that's being exposed, that's not the Great Awakening. The Great Awakening is who you are. Once you realize the illusion, and once you realize that, the dark forces or what, have been running the world for eons, then you understand what they've been robbing you of, which is your divine sovereignty.
Right. That's why they say there will be no safe place for them to walk. Once we begin to realize there's not going to be a safe place for any of those people to walk down the street, because people will be upset and angry that they withheld this. And so they're going to want to choose to be in the cell and be away.
Yeah, for sure.
So what my message here is really one of hope, and it's one of giving people direction. And it's not my message; it's really what God is saying to us, and is so. It's being preached and it's being spoken in many forms. Is that we need to understand that God has a promise for us, and we have ownership. And if we don't understand that we have ownership, then we cannot take possession. And the whole world, the whole globe is waiting on, America is this critical point, and when we take possession, when we take possession of our republic, it will be like a domino. Other countries, people are waking up around the world. It's not just in America.
Sure.
And
I
this
think more
evil that
people-
we're seeing is not just in America.
I think
It's
more
around the
people.
world.
I think more people are waking up or out. You know, I think more people are waking up outside of the United States, percentage wise, than in the. But or at least I should say over the last couple of years. I think America's waking up pretty big time.
No, we are. I think the majority has woken up, and the majority. And so the question
Well,
now is
they're
like,
starting to wake up. They're starting to realize that something. There's been some trickery. There's been dishonesty, and there's a whole. And once you realize one of those paradigms is. Once one of those paradigms, like for instance, you think everyone in Hollywood is a great person. Once one of your paradigms is shattered, then it's easier for the next one, and then the next one, and then all of a sudden you're left with, oh my gosh, what is reality? And then that's when the real great awakening happens, which is the reality is you are of God, you are part of God, God is within you, you're God's children. There's so many different ways that the main thing for me that you blessed me with when we talked was just, when the world awakens to God's promise and how that can be different, and we're all unique, but that God's promise of that the abundance and the good life and is there for you to take ownership of, right?
right.
And maybe we'll see some of that. I know we will with Nasara.
Sarah's going to come through, and the central banks are bankrupt. They're done.
It's happening, right?
It's already happening.
We're
and so
seeing
there's
it,
all these things are not bad things. They are what the patriots are doing to take possession.
Yeah.
And it's disruptive. It's unsettling, and people think, well, I want to hear. I'll believe it when you show me proof of it. I'll believe it when I have proof. And so what they're asking for really is, I want my mainstream media to tell me what to believe. I want my mainstream media to give me the indoctrination, because they're used to being fed an indoctrination. They're used to being programmed.
And so let's end off on this. So basically the mainstream media is like the dealership that says you don't own the truck,
right?
And you believed them, but then when you finally believe that those keys were yours, the title showed up, and that's what we need to do is we need to know what our Constitution is, who we are, and that we have the keys in us, with us always, and it's time for us to step up.
It's time to start driving our truck, to start moving around and creating a new
taking
foundation.
it back, yeah,
taking it back. So if you think of the title as the declassification, all these declassing that has been coming out about different situations.
Because because we've always known that politicians are corrupt, but we
didn't know how.
We didn't know how much. Yeah.
We didn't know how much, and we didn't know why. And people are asking why. When in that analogy, one person told you one thing and another person told you another thing, and you're sitting there. Well, why? Why would they? What's the motive? What's the gain? And the gain is that the low vibration that they are promoting, the game plan is still with the central banks. It still has to do with the satanic culture that is part of that. And so they want to keep that. We've been living in a demonic illusion.
Say again what so laggards are beings who do not ascend with their
Ascend.
planet.
Okay, so in order to move to a higher dimension, you have to be a vibrational match to that vibration.
Yes.
Okay, so when a planet ascends, when a planet moves to a higher vibration, all the beings on that planet must match the vibration of the planet. If they do not, then they die. And it is not the I die and get to be reborn. It's the eternal death. It's the you don't get to come back from this, okay? Because there's no place to go to reincarnate to. Excuse me.
Why isn't it there? Why can't there be another planet somewhere
Well, there
far
was.
away where they can try again?
Well, that's what happened with our
That's this
planet.
planet. Is that
That's this
Earth?
planet. So when
Earth
we
is the
came,
one. I've heard that where Earth is like everyone's last chance if they didn't do it on their own planet.
that was it. We were the last chance. So when we came onto this planet, we came as the Kingdom 3. We came as humanity.
Where do you
We
get all
came-
this information about the laggards and the fact? Because it's fascinating. I mean, is there a book in the Bible that talks about it?
No, this is from the Bible. It is part of the creation story. It is part of all the stories of shamanic stories, but it's in the Gnosis and the Law, and it's in some of the books that Patricia Cota-Robles writes, and some of the spiritual hierarchy, like Master Saint Germain and things like this.
Oh, yeah, I mean that's
So
great. So like I was telling you, Dolores can't. So there's a. I've heard that the Palladians, and that have you heard about the Palladians?
yes,
So the Palladian universe or that dimension, some of them have come. Those beings have come into our galaxy, into our universe. Some of us are from the Palladians, and then I've heard when Dolores Cannon said that at some point there's going to be a split Earth where those souls that are ready to go into the 5D will go on to that planet, which will be full of abundance and that type of stuff. And people who are not able to ascend will stay on the 3-dimensional planet, and it'll almost be in 2 different dimensions.
yeah, I've heard this too, and it is a good possibility. But here's what happened when these beings, these laggards, could not ascend with their planet. It was asked. The question was asked: would the humans, would we accept these laggards and give them the opportunity to come onto and have the experience of evolving on our planet? And so we did. We allowed them. We said, yes, come on in. And we birthed them into our planet through the priestess and the high priest. And these were the people that were in Lemuria and in Atlantis, okay? We thought that we could overlight them and help them to grow and help them to evolve, because we had evolved and we were holding the light very high. And so, but these people, some of them that came into this realm, into this world, they were very dark. They
had to be. If there was, you got to think, if they didn't ascend with their planet, they were either, I mean, like, it seems that they would be obviously dark because they wouldn't ascend it. So they had already, they
were very dark. And
it's
we
like
did not, we were in a very pure state, and we did not understand the darkness that they were going to bring into the world. And they started with secrets. They started with darkness, and gradually that darkness spread, and the priestess and the priest cannot overlight them, could not keep them in the light. And so we had the downfall. Now,
this is people who were orphans. Do you know about that? Like people whose home planet got blown up. Have you heard of that?
About that? I have not heard about those.
Well, because if you think about it, or you got the laggards or whatever, but if you believe, and I believe that there has been, do you believe in galactic Do you believe in higher being, aliens on spaceships and whatnot? Or do you think that's all?
I believe that we have galactic federation. We have
Right.
beings that are.
So where are they from? They already graduated from their planet and they're in that higher state already.
So when the Earth was in this horrible state with the laggards,
still is.
They were thinking the Galactic Federation was.
The laggards are still here, yeah.
Right. Yeah, they're still here.
They're part of the
when they were here on our planet, when they were running amok, the Galactic Federation wanted to destroy the Earth because they said, look, we can't let this spread throughout the galaxy. So they were thinking of destroying the Earth.
They were going to blow it up again.
They were going to blow us up. And Sunat Kumara, and you will hear his name, Sunat Kumara, he said, look, I'm going to come onto Earth. I'm going to help them. I'm going to evolve. He developed Shambhala, the city of Shambhala, the holy city, which is still here on this earth. Right. And he was like, let's help them. Let's get this thing straightened out. And so because of him and his organization and his help, we ended up being able to kind of get through that bad, horrible time. Even though it's still horrible, it is still, we have hope. So because of that, because of what we did, of what humanity took on, when it came time for the 2012, when December 2012 came along, the reason that Earth did not die and the reason that the people of Earth did not die when the planet raised its vibration was because it was divine compensation for what we had sacrificed, for what we had done out of compassion. So what they did was they helped us, and they've been holding, and you talked about the hologram, they've been holding us to allow us time to make this transition into the higher realms.
And you just said that we were given more time because of our compassion?
Because of our compassion for the laggards, because of what we had.
Well, and isn't that's like being what Jesus was, right?
Right, exactly.
Compassionate.
So
love,
we were given,
higher vibration is love.
We were given an extra time to do so. What we are experiencing has never happened in the history of any galactic planet where people existed on that planet in various stages of dimensions. We had, right after 2012, we had third dimension, fourth dimension, and fifth dimension all existing at the same time. And people were getting so sick. They were having, it was very difficult. It was especially the sensitive ones were having
the ones that were more
tremendous difficulties.
Because
they solved a little bit of the problem by solving the fourth dimension was very, very dark, and they kind of closed that dimension and helped us stabilize this.
Would you say
this hasn't been done. This has never been done, where people can exist on a planet where the planet has shifted, the vibration is high, but we're still on these different plateaus. So
well, I've heard that. I mean, I know that, like, first of all, I've heard there's never been a planet in existence that has been given the free will, right? The choice. You hear about other beings where, like, if you're born an angel, then you're kind of born in a high vibration. If you're born, I don't know. The point is I've heard two things. One is we have free choice, which other planets and other times, you didn't as much. And secondly, that this is the first time in the history of the universe that and this is what you're talking about, an entire planet of people are or, but that's not, but no, but that has happened, right? If the laggards were left, then in that theory, or that, um, I like the word theory. When I say theory, I mean that with the most, like, it's the closest that you can say between, before fact. So
Mhm.
if there's laggards, that means there has been other planets that have evolved consciously before.
Mhm. Mhm. And what has happened in those planets, they did not make a space for the laggards. In other words, they weren't willing as a society to take on the laggards or to give them space. And that's why we had them. They were left behind and they were going to die. They were going to be, I was like the end total, like your essence and all that you
Your
are
soul
is
goes, your soul goes back to the melting pot. And
right,
then you're
right.
no
It goes
longer
down to like
your
back
individual.
to
You're no longer an individual snowflake. You're just gone. You
right.
melted.
You're
You
gone.
melted away.
You're all done.
Your
So
soul's life path is no longer.
and we had compassion for that. We had sympathy. We didn't want to see that happen. We
Who's
thought
we?
we, the humanity,
The ones that had the divine bloodline, the one that had
the ones that were on the
that already
planet
had the compassion.
that had the compassion. And we said,
And
no, we
oh my
will
God,
overshine.
Rita, you just nailed it. Because check it out. What is the biggest problem on the planet is that the nice people don't think that the bad people are bad until they're hit over the head with it because they're so damn nice. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
good people can't imagine that people are so bad. And then till they get hit with it over and over and over again, then they become jaded. So you're saying that the beings that had the divine bloodline were compassionate to these other beings, who then a lot of them ended up taking advantage of that, and so here we are.
They
Here we
brought
are
their
again.
darkness, and they weren't ready to. They brought their magic and all of that with them into this planet, into this realm, and embedded themselves, infiltrated, really, and they weren't part of the covenant with God. So when we came onto this
They
planet,
weren't here.
we have a covenant with God. Adam and Eve have a covenant with God. That means a bound, a sacred lifetime. And so we have that covenant.
Yes.
That and
meanwhile,
they did not.
It's like this. The God of love and righteousness, God who I consider God to be, is a good God. I mean, he's the one. You have these other people that worship other demonic gods and do the sacrifices and whatnot. And to them, what they're worshiping is the God, right? So this is, quite fascinating. But the good always prevails. I think that, to me, like, it's kind of like manifesting, like the truck, you got to manifest it, because you got to know, like, in order to manifest something, you got to, like, know you're going to do it. It's like, I just don't understand why the bad guys, the laggards or the reptilians, why they don't want to just, be of the higher love vibration, or why it's impossible for them to, like, that's weird to me. Because here I am, you got my compassion again, thinking like, well, what is it? Why can't these other beings, why can't they, is it the way they're raised? Because they're stuck in that, they create bad karma. They kill people. So then when they come back, they're part of that same family, and then they continue to just be demonic. It's weird. It's weird.
It is weird. It is a question I don't have a good answer to. I think that they made a choice to serve a different outcome, and they are being fed in different energy, a different frequency that
Right.
that is different from what we are knowing. And so it's like judging everything by your perception. So we look at, we are in the compassion, we are in love, so we judge everything by that.
Right.
Okay. But
If you're in the-
these
if you're in the-
beings do not abide by that. They're not under that covenant of love. They're not under that. They're under a different covenant. They're under a different bloodline. And so they don't have that same frequency to us.
Right. And if they're, fear and control is what they know and what they understand, then they're going to look at everything from the fear and control